as always, if you have, oh, I just realized my camera's not on. As always, if you have questions you'd like Kevin to answer, feel free to put them in the chat and we will get to them. So for those of you that don't know, but hopefully everyone does, this is Kevin Strika. He is our Lead 360 feature today. I have a little bio I'm going to read about him. So Kevin Strika is the Vice President of Operations at First Option Mortgage and a proud MBA graduate of the Georgia Tech Scheller College of Business. Did I say that correctly?
You got it.
Amazing. Since joining First Option in 2013, Kevin has focused on streamlining and optimizing many key areas of operations, including processing, closing, post-closing, servicing, compliance, and reporting. In addition to his operations background, he is also the Encompass LOS administrator for First Option and has leveraged a myriad of settings, tools, and features to further operational goals and drive efficiencies in the daily operations of the company. Kevin is also a lifelong Atlanta resident and proud father of two. Any key points that I missed that you want to make sure everyone knows before we jump in?
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, good. Hopefully, as everyone knows, we will kind of go through some Q&A to ask Kevin, how he got to where he is today, about his leadership style, as well as some fun little questions sprinkled in. So my favorite one to start with is always where we all start every day. What is your morning routine? Can you describe it for us? I'm sure it's interesting with two little ones at home.
I mean, it's really nothing special. I mean, yeah, wake up too early, take a shower, stumble to the coffee machine, figure out what crisis awaits me in the morning and get on the road. So it really nothing too crazy or unique there. I mean, there's just always something to deal with, whether it's, a kid that doesn't want to eat or, something that's been forgotten somewhere or somebody sending emails way too early, take your pick. But no, there's nothing terribly special about my morning routine. Just do what it takes to get the day started.
What about the commute? Are you a silent car driver, podcast, morning show, music?
Podcast for sure.
Nice. Okay. Any recommendations?
I mean, I could spend this whole time talking about that, but I listen to a lot of business podcasts, a lot of like market podcasts. There's some good ones from investing services. There's some good ones from like Goldman Sachs. There's some good ones from Morgan Stanley. There's just a lot of interesting podcast material. I think probably my favorite one is How I Built This from Guy Raz. That's a really good one. Then the Freakonomics Network has a lot of really interesting ones as well.
Good to know. I enjoyed reading Freakonomics, so I'll have to check that out. So more on a business and professional related side, what are a few strengths that you have that you think describe yourself as a leader and then also just in general?
I mean, so my my leadership style, I think, is very technocratic and process driven. So I'm big on breaking down processes and really getting to the heart of what we're trying to accomplish with any given question and how best to get there in a long-term and sustainable approach. So I'm very process oriented. I really live in the details and tend to take as much time as needed to actually, research any particular problem or question, maybe to an exhaustive end. But that's really where I come from as a leader. I don't really like to shoot from the hip. I really like to just make sure everything is thoroughly answered and is as sustainable over time as possible.
Okay, and we have a similar, like a segue question from Clay. How did getting your MBA change your perspective on the business or your leadership style, or did it at all?
I think as with any program, you're going to kind of run the buffet line and take things that are useful and leave things that aren't. I mean, any MBA program is going to be is going to have it's a healthy serving of like statistical methods and quantitative analysis, which is very helpful. And then they'll have all kinds of like theory or perspective courses as well, which, those can be helpful in certain contexts and not in others. So, I mean, those programs are really shaped to kind of be, to kind of serve all sorts of backgrounds. I mean, from mine in particular, I learned a lot from, from the quantitative side of those courses. There were some very interesting ones regarding like technological improvements and like, budding technologies that I think are going to more or less infect the mortgage space over time. So that was extremely helpful. But I mean, overall, like, I didn't come out of it like a different person, so to speak. It was more just sharpening perspectives on certain items and introducing new ideas that I hadn't thought about previously.
So I guess also on the learning type topic, is there someone that you would say has been a mentor throughout your career or throughout your professional life? And what kind of things did they teach you if you did have a mentor?
Probably the longest term mentor that I've had has been my dad. He was in business for a long time. Recently retired. Probably the best thing I ever learned from him is to never forget what game you're playing, right? So every person out there, I mean, they're all playing a slightly different game. We may all be working in the same company or same business or same function, but everybody's game is a little bit different. I mean, some people, I mean, if you look to your right or left, they're here just fundraising for, the other things that they really want to do in life. Some people, this is their actual passion. I mean, so if you always remember like, to think about what game it is that people are playing, and then what game you're playing yourself, that helps you put just about anything into perspective. But I mean, I believe that for most people that you meet, I mean, even if they're not, what you would call a mentor, I mean, you can get something out of just about everybody. I mean, virtually everybody that I work with on any kind of regular basis, I can point to at least one thing, that I've learned from them. Now, even if they weren't intentionally teaching something or weren't trying to relay a lesson, so to speak.
So do you think that having worked at First Option for so long and kind of, as Clay puts it, quote unquote, growing up at First Option, do you think that has affected your leadership perspective, and how?
One of the things I value the most about this place, especially as during the time that I've been here, is it's small enough where we've always needed help with virtually everything. So I was able over time to raise my hand and get involved in pretty much anything I wanted to, which has been an incredibly valuable asset. I mean, there's really no better way to learn than being able to jump hands-on into a dozen different areas. So that I think if I started out at like a much bigger company, I probably wouldn't have had that kind of opportunity. If I was, if you're with, prototypical example, the Wells Fargos of the world, I mean, you'll get pigeonholed into one thing extremely quickly, right? And you can't really get involved in a lot of other stuff as easily because, they've already got 25 people working on just about anything you could name. So for me, at the time I joined, it was, it was, kind of right time, right place. And I've definitely benefited from that kind of experience over time. And, part of, a key part of leadership, I think, is you have to know what you're talking about. It's very difficult to be in a leadership role where you haven't even come close to mastering the subject you're supposed to be leading on. So having the ability to rotate between a lot of different departments and learning at the margins about all aspects of this business has been extremely helpful in developing the ability to then go ahead and lead on those topics as well. So I mean, for those reasons, it's been highly influential being here, at First Option.
Would you say, like, is there something that looking back you wish someone had told you in your career journey, or if you could look at yourself, little baby Kevin back in 2013 about to have his first day at First Option, if you could go back and say, hey, remember this, it's going to be really helpful in the next 10 or so years?
One of the things that I wish was mentioned or emphasized more heavily at the time, and I try to tell people as much as I can these days, is that so much of this business is out there. It's publicly available information. I mean, if people would just go use the resources that are available for free, I mean, it's like having a cheat code. I swear, like you could cut years out of your development by taking advantage of some of the resources that other people have put together and made available, on the internet. So it took me years to figure out that all these crazy, confusing regulations, the alphabet soup of them that and love between, the QMs and the HMDAs and the, CFPB stuff and the MCRs and, sections 32 and 35 and points and, all kinds of this jumble of words that we throw together and, seems really, really confusing and people have a bazillion questions about. It's all online. Like it's literally there, the actual regulations. And then the government puts together compliance guides that make it easy. And they literally call it small entity compliance guides. I mean, it's meant for lay people. You can go there and you can read it and you can become a master in like a week on any of these things. So back in the day, I literally printed out a lot of these and just camped out in a conference room and didn't leave until I understood these regulations. I mean, and that of course helps me because then I can develop tools and systems and processes that then make it easier for other people to kind of jump that line and not have to do every bit of that research. But for those who are legitimately curious, I mean, there's just a ridiculous amount of information out there. Some of it's government sponsored, others is through like the mortgage companies. I mean, I like to send that email at least once a year, that remind people of how much of the actual, how to process, how to underwrite, tips and tricks for different programs are available from these people, the mortgage companies that are begging for our business. I mean, I put it in the links that, we install on every new computer, but, it's been kind of a struggle to get people to actually devote the time. But if you really are passionate about learning and investing in this business, then that's one of the best things you can absolutely do.
So we have a question from Joe, and I know you kind of touched on this with the links that are on the new computers. Is there like a particular resource that you would say for a new MLO, this is a great place to start and kind of start here, get your feet wet, figure out all the things you don't know so you can learn about them?
Yeah, the mortgage insurance company trainings are probably the easiest, most accessible of the resources. So I mean, it literally it runs the gamut from how can I use Facebook to boost my sales to how do I analyze an appraisal on a particular property. I mean, to how do I review the credit report? What kind of red flags should I look for? I mean, there's so much of this business that these companies are trying desperately to add value by publishing material, and it's all out there if you wanted to take a look at it. So I would highly encourage you to start there.
So based on your last few answers, it sounds like a value that's really important to you is, using your resources and being well versed and well educated in the areas that you cover. Are there any other values that you would say are most important to you as a leader? And also, not to put words in your mouth, if you're like, well, what you just said is completely wrong, then feel free to correct me.
No. I mean, obviously, I value being educated and well versed in our mutual business for sure. But I mean, probably the most important leadership characteristic in my mind is the ability to execute. Right. I mean, one of the phrases I heard a long time ago, it's always stuck with me. Something like vision without execution is called hallucination. I mean, you could be the most top line idea guy in the world, but if you can't translate that into actual action, I mean, what good is it? I mean, so the ability to actually turn to turn an idea or a concept or a plan into something that you can actually act upon is absolutely critical.
Okay. Would you say that, I always like this question, what would you say is your biggest downfall as a leader and skills that you have to, that you're continuing to work on to become a better leader?
delegation, I think, is has been something I've had to work on a lot over the years. I mean, that kind of stems from when we were a much smaller company in terms of headcount. I had to do a lot personally, and I made a lot of progress in making sure that I could do a lot of things in a short amount of time. But I mean, that's not a race that you can ever win. I mean, you'll never outrun the amount of work that can pile up. So being able to have like other leaders that I can trust to handle certain activities has been something I've had to work on over the years, and I think we made a lot of excellent progress with that endeavor. I mean, so now I've got a processing team lead here in corporate that I can trust to handle just about anything that I would normally do in processing. I've got a closing team lead that I can trust with virtually everything in that domain as well. But it wasn't always easy getting to that point or finding the right people. So that's been something that I've had to work on a lot over the years.
Okay. What has there been a really memorable moment in your career that you will always remember, can point to as like one of the big moments you've had thus far?
I believe that most of the important things in life don't happen in a single moment. The truly important things that they happen in small increments over time, right? So I can't really point to career-wise like one big single moment where it just really sticks out to me. But when I look back on the summation of all of the small incremental improvements that we made and changes and our ability to bolster our process, that's really where I derive the value, like my value as a leader. It's just looking at, what have we been able to do by staying focused and buckling down. I mean, looking at, for example, the state of our process or systems now versus what it was in 2013 or 14. I mean, that's inspiring to me. I feel accomplished by examining it in that context.
Okay, we have another question from Clay. How do you deal with the ups and downs that come with this industry from a leadership perspective?
Scalability is another huge focus. I mean, when you're planning anything, leadership wise, you need to focus on not only the ability to scale up, but the ability to scale down too, right? A lot of people forget about the down part of that. When you're in such a cyclical business like real estate or a lot of different things, I mean, if you have 100 people and a process that serves 100 people, it's great if it can serve 1,000, but can it serve 50? Can it serve 25? Not everything survives that test, and that's something that I try to put, just about every initiative I have through. Whether it's looking at terms of a contract or looking at improvements in a system, it's got to be able to scale up and down for exactly that reason. That's a lesson I think everybody in this business learns the hard way, at least the first time. But it's one I've definitely tried to internalize as well.
Okay, so that was a couple not too fun questions in a row. So I'll give you a break
Right?
with a fun one. How do you relax or have fun? Obviously, other than hanging out at First Option Mortgage.
What's fun? No, I'm just kidding. Uh, so I mean, these days I barely have time for a lot of like hobbies, but I've become a big podcast guy over the last couple of years. I do like to try to get outside. I live in a beautiful part of town, with a lot of like green space amenities that I try to go enjoy when I can. Like I said, time's short, but if I can get out there once or twice a month, that's fantastic. And then I do enjoy a good project at home. So like right now we're redoing like a pantry closet. So I'm making all the shelves, and I should have that installed by the end of the weekend probably.
That's
So I
always
don't know.
such a
I,
good feeling when you finally finish a project.
I can get lost in something like that pretty easy. I mean, it doesn't take much. I don't need to be climbing Everest or any of that good jazz. But I mean, just something the little things, I guess.
Okay, what are you most excited about, I guess, professionally and personally in the next year?
So Professionally, I've got a couple cool projects I've been working on. Pretty excited about. One, well, of course, they both are pretty heavy on data, but one is a neat way to analyze risk in our files. Using data from the 1003, calculate that in real time to help underwriting, help our payment performance on the back end. So I'm excited to actually put that into production here in the next month or so. Another cool project I'm working on is a disclosure data capture project. Yeah, I've made a lot of progress on that over the last month or so. And so what that's going to do is it's going to capture in real time a lot of information from our disclosures, which is something that the base Encompass product doesn't do a great job of. So we'll be able to keep better tabs on things like tolerance cures. We'll be able to use it for other data purposes, like for example, being able to summarize something like insurance policies that are disclosed per market, and and be able to kind of identify, like, average values, right? So if we have somebody consistently disclosing like insurance is $50, but in that market the average is actually 75 and they're routinely having to increase it, we can actually do better for the customers by taking advantage of that data and disclosing more accurate figures up front. Now once you have the data, there's a litany of cool things that you can do with that sort of thing. So what I'm working on recently is just having a way to get that data recorded as we go. The more information you have, the more you can do. The possibilities are really kind of endless, if you know how to capture the data. So professionally, that stuff is what I really find truly exciting. I mean, there's part of my job that you just have to do it. Like, nobody likes troubleshooting post-closing files where there's always going to be a next one, right? But the parts I really enjoy are those projects where from the moment they're implemented on, they'll actually make a difference moving forward on an exponential basis. I try to minimize the amount of work I have to do that's only really going to affect that one file or that one person. I really try to focus more on the things that are going to be broadly applicable or game changing on an ongoing basis. So that's the sort of stuff that kind of gets me excited to start the workday. On a personal level, we got a new baby coming in October, so that
How exciting!
Yeah, I really got to try to make progress on these projects before then, because I think my time is going to get even more limited after that. But
yes,
I'll
I'm
just
sure.
have to work smarter, right? I guess that's a good incentive.
Congratulations, Kevin.
Congratulations. We're all very excited for you and your family. We have about 5 minutes left, so just a couple more questions. Russell would like, well, now there's so many congratulations coming through, I lost his question. Russell would like to know, what do you do to handle the day-to-day demands of the business?
I mean, so one of the best ways I started hacking that question many years ago at this point was, if you look at the day-to-day demands that come in, if you look at the questions that come in, I mean, normally you get the same ones over and over. Like, there is some level of trend or repeat, and so I've started really analyzing that. And if I see that I'm having to answer the same question, usually I draw the line about 3 or 4 times. If I get the same thing over, let's say, a quarter, I try to put together, some kind of announcement or video or way that I can kind of shortcut that the next time it comes in. So, for example, I just had a question about, how to do splits in a file, like between 2 loan officers. Well, I was able to copy paste it from when I had that question previously, so I don't have to spend the time explaining it on an individual basis over and over and over again. So, I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can kind of hack the system or shortcut the amount of work that any one thing takes. So videos have been incredibly useful to me. I've been doing that for quite some time. I'm sure most of you have at least heard my voice on those videos once or twice. So it's been a highly useful tool. But thinking in a scalable and sustainable way. I really try to focus on getting tools or systems in place that can help answer those questions, maybe even before they come in.
Okay. I have two more questions for you. First one, can you tell us about a time you failed and learned something?
I always ask that question in interviews, and I feel like such a jerk when I do. But yeah, so one time I failed at something. Well, there's two. One of them silly. When I was first starting the Encompass admin part of my job, we were doing this home warranty program. It didn't end up going very far, but I had it set up in such a way where the system would email me every time a new file came in, and I would have to set a certain value based on whether they were going to do some home warranty thing or not. So I thought that was a fantastic idea at the time. So, hey, I get the notification and I can make the change, and then it quickly devolved into, if you ever see that classic I Love Lucy episode with the chocolates on the conveyor belt,
Yes.
it turned into that within like 3 days. Just the
So it was
pace
not
of it
scalable,
was
is what
just
you're saying.
absolutely ridiculous, right? Not scalable. Right. So, I mean, everybody learns things like that, usually the hard way. But from that experience, I ended up learning more about, what kind of approaches are scalable or not. At the time, I was really just toying around with what the system can do. So chalk that one up. And there's, I make mistakes every week at least. I mean, everybody does. No one's perfect. We had a lot of mistakes when when TRID rolled out. There were a lot of things in the in the realm of possibilities that I had no idea about. I was unable to countenance that a file would get set up in a certain way, or somebody would try to do something in a certain way. And so, I mean, some of it had real consequences. There were things that I could have prevented. Had I thought harder about certain things. And experiences like that, they really make you learn. I mean, hopefully you can get that experience for free, but sometimes it does come with a penalty or cost. The important thing is just to make sure that things are fixed moving forward, or things operate better in the next transaction than they did on the last. And everybody's got a version of that. Whether you're a single loan officer dealing with one transaction at a time, or if you're trying to put rules into a system for everybody to use. Everyone can operationalize that in some way, shape, or form.
Okay, and we are at time, but I have one more question because it's one of my favorites. If you were not in mortgages, what would you be doing?
I would most likely either be in technology or consulting, or consulting in regards to technology.
Okay, so that's the realistic other job. What's the like, in my dream world, this would be a thing I would love to get paid to do?
I mean, in my dream world, I would have just won the lottery, and I can be on a beach somewhere. But uh, yeah, I really don't know. I
You can
mean,
say technology, that's still
yeah,
fair.
sure. I'll just stay consistent on that. I mean, I really do. I really do enjoy, the process parts of the job, and the parts where I can try to solve a technological challenge. So, I mean, even if I wasn't doing this, I'd like to be doing something similar in a different industry. If I had never heard that radio jingle years and years and years ago, right, and just ended up somewhere else, I would probably have gravitated toward something similar, where I would be applying technology to try to solve problems.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for letting us pick your brain, Kevin. It was awesome getting to kind of learn more about your leadership style and, the thoughts behind your actions. It's always super interesting. We don't get the chance to, especially those of us, well, not those of us, because you're right down the hall for me, but those of our first option family that don't work here in corporate, to get to learn more about our leadership. So thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining. If there were people on your team that did not have a chance to join, I will be sharing this recording on my Connect. So definitely point them in that direction if they would like to watch the series. And be sure to tune into our next episode. We will feature Kurt Nikolai, one of our managing partners. I believe it's the second Tuesday in September, but just keep an eye out for that announcement to come out. And thank you so much, Kevin, and thank you everyone for joining.
All righty. Thank you.